based on the recent reports, what are the structural loopholes that hamper Pakistan's trade potential?
Thank you, and thank you everyone for the invitation to this webinar. I would say if I have to pick three, three seems to be the magic number, so I'll pick three. There are three basic elements that are determining how successful Pakistan and Pakistani firms can be at exporting, and these are, the first is tariffs. So basically, the import duties that are imposed on products that come into Pakistan. And one can think, okay, but import duties are imposed on imports, so why do they affect exports? So the point is that import duties are really an export duty in disguise. So whenever you're putting an import duty, what you're doing is you're discouraging a domestic firm from going global, from going into export markets, and you're encouraging that firm to take advantage of the protection that the import duty provides. And in Pakistan, import duties are extremely high. They are high in the international, highly protected region as South Asia. So just let me give you an example. If you look at the food processing sector in Pakistan, and if you take into account the import duties along the whole value chain, final and intermediates and raw materials, and you also take into account the amount of value they add, they face a 260% effective protection rate. So basically that provides no incentive whatsoever for firms in that sector in Pakistan to export. They will prefer to sell domestically. So that's item number one. Item number two, I would say, is the crucial element, that is productivity. So the relationship between productivity and trade is a two-way street. You need to be productive to be able to export successfully, and as you export more, you become more productive. So what we see in Pakistan is that productivity is low, and the growth of productivity per annum, which is about half of what we see in Bangladesh or what we see in India. And part of that is related to what the previous speaker was saying. There is very little investment in people. And let me link this to an indicator that is called capital deepening, that is basically by how much capital or machinery per worker increases in Pakistan, which is basically over the last 5 years, it has been brought to zero. So there is zero increase in the amount of machinery per worker in Pakistan, which is basically reducing productivity and preventing export. And the third thing to finalize is that export promotion is also very important to export successfully. The amount of information that firms have about foreign markets, about what it takes to get standards compliance, what it takes to find new clients. And this is something that needs substantial reform in Pakistan. That structure of export promotion needs to be modernized, needs to be made more smarter, be made IT, artificial intelligence, big data based. So I think these are three key elements: tariffs, productivity, and export promotion, that need to be ramped up, in the case of tariff actually reduced, to bring trade to be a more prominent force for growth in Pakistan. I'll stop here. Thank you.
What international examples could we follow to raise exports during COVID-19? We're stuck in this situation. So if 40% of tax is being collected through imports and we liberalize tariffs, how can we collect revenues then? And if you could please comment in light of the note of the import duties that you recently posted.
So there are several parts of this question, right? Let me start with the last part. That is, if there is a large portion of revenues that come from imports, then if we reduce those import duties, then what do we do? Okay, so that's a very important question. What we know from international experience is that as countries grow, become more developed, they move away from highly distortionary tariffs, right? Highly distortionary taxes like import duties, and they move into excise tax, and they move into income tax, right? So GST, VAT, income tax. So there's sort of a pecking order of taxes, from the most distortionary, those that you collect at the import stage, towards the least distortionary, and those that take a lot of capabilities to be able to collect, right? So it's easy to tax imports, and this is why less developed countries tax imports. They come at the border, and at the border, it's easy to control what comes in and what comes out. Still, there's smuggling, etc., but it's relatively easier. Now, the challenge is that as we move into later stages of development, we also need to be able to build capabilities to collect better taxes. So the challenge for Pakistan is building those capabilities to be able to move to less distortionary taxes, excise, VAT, GST, and eventually income tax. So that's the first thing that I wanted to say. Now, then in terms of examples, what examples should Pakistan follow in terms of successful export strategies? What I would say here is, there is no one example that fits Pakistan. Pakistan is a different country than any other country in the world, and so it's difficult to find one. But I would say, look East Asia, right? And look at the experiences of East Asia. And one favorite example that I have is the example of Vietnam. And the example of Vietnam is quite good because, in 2000, Vietnam had a very similar export structure to the one of Pakistan. A lot of primary product exports, a lot of textiles. And if you fast forward to 2018, 2019, what you see is a extreme transformation of the export basket, and Vietnam starts exporting IT equipment, starts exporting computers, television sets, cameras, mobile phones, but it also exports textiles, and it also exports commodities and primary goods. How did Vietnam do that? Through something that the first speaker mentioned before, integrating into the global economy through trade agreements. So more trade agreements, integration with ASEAN, that was quite a good trade agreement, and attracting a lot of FDI. One in particular, Samsung. Samsung accounts for a large portion of the exports of Vietnam. So the challenge for Pakistan is not to follow one particular country's example. The challenge for Pakistan is to have a set of policies that are conducive to more competition and more upgrading. And that set of policies needs to include policies that boost productivity, policies that attract a lot of foreign direct investment that is efficiency seeking. So that foreign direct investment that wants to come to a country, to set shop in a country, to sell to the world, like Samsung did in Vietnam, like Microsoft did in Costa Rica. And this is something that is going to boost investment in Pakistan, is going to create more and better jobs, and it's something that is going to boost exports. But for that, you need the elements that I was mentioning before, a relatively open trade environment, because an efficiency-seeking multinational will want to be able to trade parts and components. You will need a lot of effort in terms of export promotion, because you need to make Pakistan an attractive destination for foreign companies to come. And I will add one more thing, that is, make it easy for foreigners to come into Pakistan. I am a foreigner. I can give you my own example. It is very difficult to get a visa to come into Pakistan. And if you want to get more FDI, you need to facilitate the process of visas. And I am cognizant of the fact that the process has become much better than it was, but it's still tough. And if you want in century 21 to have integration with the world economy, you need goods to move, you need ideas to move, but you also need people to move. So these are things that I think, rather than thinking, okay, what is the country example, I think the example should be in what are the concepts. We need to facilitate movement of people, movement of ideas, and movement of goods. I think that is going to help increasing exports. I'll stop here.
There's a general trend to consider imports as harmful for the economy. Would you say import-led growth has worked for any other economy in the long run?
Good question. So I don't think there's such a thing as import-led growth, but also I don't think imports are a bad thing for the economy. Imports are a good thing for the economy. Imports are good for consumers of one variety, but most importantly, and in the case of Pakistan, imports are good for industry. If you look at the composition of imports in Pakistan, 90% or 85 to 90% of imports in Pakistan are for industrial use or business use. So it's only 15% of the imports that are consumed by you and me, consumers in general. The bulk of imports are used by factories, by businesses in Pakistan to do something else, to produce something else. So it's a part and components, it's fuels, it's machinery and equipment. So this type of things. So there is no country in the world that has moved to an medium upper level of income that has done so by restricting imports, because you need the imports to be able to produce what you need, but also you need imports to consume. And variety is good and variety is appreciated. So the challenge is not so much whether imports are good or bad, or whether we should make a decision between imports and exports. So imports are needed to export. And that false opposition is to be dropped from the discourse. And rather than thinking about limited imports, what we need to do is we need to think about how are we going to finance those imports? How are we going to pay for those imports? And the way to pay for those imports is, either you export more, or you attract investment to pay for that. And I think this is in line with what Chandana was saying when you asked her about the current account deficit, right? If you bring enough foreign direct investment, that will finance your current account deficit. If you don't bring foreign direct investment and you still run a current account deficit, then that's a challenge. So what I would say is a successful case of import-led growth, well, let's turn that question around and think, if we want to have a successful case of export-led growth, we need to let imports in, but at the same time lift all barriers that the country has on export, so that we can pay for those imports. And those barriers are mainly productivity being stagnant, access to finance being a challenge, lack of export intelligence provisions to firms, and challenges with branding that are creating problems for exporters in services, in manufacturing, to find new clients elsewhere. So I'm going to be brief now in the interest of time. So that's all I wanted to say about this. Thank you.
So Gonzalo, I don't know how much you've been studying e-commerce, recent rise in Pakistan and what sort of barriers e-commerce is facing. So there was a question about, payment gateway, PayPal, or lack of other financing channels. So along with financing, can you tell us about what is the future of e-commerce in Pakistan, and what are some of the policy measures that we should rethink to promote e-commerce in the country?
Well, e-commerce is going to boom, right? It's booming already, and it's going to boom even more globally. So Pakistan should certainly embrace e-commerce. It is very promising that there is an e-commerce framework, and there is a policy that is being implemented by the government of Pakistan. That's a very good thing. I think probably the main challenge with e-commerce is payments gateways, and this is what we see in many countries in the world that tend to impose some sort of restrictions to movement of capital, that they make payments gateway more complicated to be operative. So if Pakistan soon sorts out the payments gateway issue, then I think this is going to make e-commerce a very powerful promotion platform for many firms in Pakistan. So for domestic commerce for sure, but also even for international trade. So what you would need there is a working payments gateway, first of all, and then second, logistics systems that are operative. So that is logistics is the other element that e-commerce, one thinks about international trade, requires. So if any so think of Khadi. I don't want to make publicity of companies here, but Khadi probably is one of the most renowned brands, and Khadi could be selling internationally if it has access to a system of logistics that allows transportation by air of its products directly to consumers. This is going to be a great opportunity for firms, and it's going to be a great opportunity also for Pakistani firms to build brands. So I think those two elements, the development of the logistics sector and the sorting out for good of the of the payments gateway. And then let me say one more thing, and then I end with this. That is, and people are going to say that I'm obsessed with tariffs, but um, one thing that you need if you're going to use e-commerce for international trade is to have a system of returns, right? So say, for example, I order a shalwar kameez from Kadi, and then I try it on and it's too big. So I'm going to return it. So there must be a system that, that customs collectors use to deal with returns. This is another problem that we saw in many countries, that when firms were embracing e-commerce, that they had issues with returns and how they were going to be treated by the tariff code. So this is something that needs to be tackled with too. So three things: logistics, tariffs for returns, and payments gateway, that I think is the largest, most important.